Alright, so ColeHastings made a video, Gen Z's radicalization shouldn't surprise you. I agree with him. Let's see what he has to say.
On the surface, Gen Z looks just like any other generation before them, sort of. But beneath their external appearances are some of the most extreme ideologies the world has ever seen. Take a look at this guy. He goes by the name Clavicular online. Seems like a normal dude, right? But if you watch even 30 seconds of one of his videos, he will start using words that, to maybe 80% of people who speak English, seem completely made up.
Not quite, but okay, I sort of understand where he's going. He's probably going with like the how to describe somebody's face.
So we take a look and we've got a lot of rosacea, just showing.
Rosacea is like a medical term, so I mean, it's not abnormal to me. That's not abnormal.
You a basic way to improve by 1 to 2 PSL, because these two things, these two softmaxes can go a long way. You know, with the lack of facial angularity, it's causing me to have an overly wide perceived facial width to height ratio.
Clavicular is part of a group of people called looksmaxers who first spawned on internet forums. Looksmaxers are obsessed with doing anything and everything they can to maximize what they call their PSL and SMV, their personal look scale and sexual market value, respectively. They believe that the only thing that determines basically all areas of success in your life is your looks, and to not obsess over your looks is doing yourself a massive disservice.
Do you value hard work at all?
No, absolutely not. I value efficient work. I value smart work. Hard work is a ridiculous concept.
Oh, I agree with him on that one. I definitely agree with him on that one.
In order to optimize his looks maxing, Clavicular has been injecting testosterone since the age of 14, and he plans on flying to Turkey soon for a double jaw surgery.
Whoa. Okay, there are some things I will do, which is all health related, actually. That stuff, that's a bit too far. For me, anyways. But, I can understand his point. I mean, realistically, when it comes, like, he thinks looks dictate a lot of your life. He's not wrong. Like, he really isn't. If you're good looking and you just work at a regular company, you could probably go up the ladder way quicker. Maybe not necessarily doing the most couth things you could say, but regardless, you get the point. It's I think looks clearly matter. I mean, anybody saying it doesn't, it's lying through their teeth, or they just haven't experienced the world. Because the world gives a different picture sometimes. Reality is quite harsh sometimes.
According to online sources, he's only 19 years old. And yet he has adopted what I think most people would consider a very radicalized view of the world.
I would say he's developed actually a view which is based on his own personal experience, which is not wrong. I mean, there's clearly some truth to it. You can't tell me this is radical. There's clearly some truth to this. There's no way this is not partially true at the very least. Looks play a huge role in life. And once again, if all you have to do is just be on that other side. And once you're on the other side, you know what it's like. You go, oh shit. I mean, I experienced it when I was younger a bit, actually, before I damaged myself really badly by running my face into a thorn tree. It was extremely amazing. That's all I can say. Everything was jolly. Everything was always really good. Teacher loved me. Every kid really liked me. Girls had crushes on me. I didn't really understand that concept at the time. But like I experienced what it was like before I ran my face into a thorn tree. So I can say, hey, there's some truth to this. There's definitely some truth to this.
Subgroups of different extremist ideologies like looks maxing are not uncommon these days.
Oh, and by the way, kids are the most brutal when it comes to looks. Kids will treat you completely differently based on your looks. So that's why I know kids are probably the best examples of judge a book by its cover. Yeah, very, very much.
Now we have groypers, a term used to identify followers or fans of white nationalist and live streamer Nick Fuentes.
I have not heard this before.
On the left side, we have Antifa, or anarcho-communists, or tankies glorifying authoritarian communist regimes. We have black pillars, holding similar beliefs to looks-maxers in regards to the fact that the only thing that matters is looks, while extending their beliefs outside of the looks realm to an all-encompassing doomeristic view of the world. We have hyper-masculine.
There's a lot of reason for there to be doomers. I mean, I made a video on it. It's like people are screwed. Like I would say the young kids are screwed, and it's because the profit is basically made off of the kids. Well, the boomers are pretty much profiting off the kids because they're the ones who give the rent to the kids because the kids need to pay for rent. Rent is extremely high. Buying a house is extremely high. Housing prices are extremely inflated because of how urban planning, that's related to urban planning, and certain like zoning laws as an example. I mean, it's just, hey, it's reality. Yeah, I mean, can't really blame them for having this view, in my opinion. It's bound to happen.
Traditionalists and tradwives who think we should repeal the 19th Amendment, and hyper-feminists who think men are the source of all evil. When
like I said, it's just sort of expected, I guess.
you scroll through the trenches of social media, Reddit, or underground internet forums, your first instinct might be to ask, how could anyone seriously think like this? But if you understood the world much of Gen Z inhabits, and how that world compares to the history of past generations of radicalized youth, this would not surprise you at all. So today, I want to talk a little bit about that history. I want to explain to you why the youth have always radicalized during moments like these, how that radicalization has adapted to the internet era, and offer a way toward maybe, just maybe, not necessarily compassion, but at the very least, understanding. And then we can talk about what it would actually take to pull ourselves out of this.
You're not going to pull yourself. No, it's never going to happen. Ah, come on, bro. That's never going to happen. I got to be honest. I don't think that's ever going to happen. The only way you can the problem is you can't really, like, realistically, if you try to quote unquote unradicalize yourself, you're already sort of stepping into another territory of radicalization. Like, you get to a point where you just stop really caring. You sort of look at it all like a circus, and you look at life sort of as a simulation or a video game, right? Like it's a pay-to-win RNG video game, like I do. Honestly, I'm starting to think life is a little bit less a game and actually more a test, because in terms of the game design mechanics, this is some of the worst game design mechanics by far. It's a no-brainer. The life's game design is horrific. If you were to ask anybody who did game design and made seriously good games and like ask them about the game of life and like, is it well designed? Like, would you say the game of life is well designed? I can guarantee you almost 90% of them, 99% of them would say no. It's terrible. And it's because it is terrible. You're spawned into a completely random place. The game is pay to win. There's a lot of pay to win aspects. Some aspects are completely, by the way, out of your control, or you're completely unaware of them. You have no idea to be aware of them. You're not given a tutorial. I mean, there's like an endless list of things where I look at it and it's like, it's a test, or it's an RNG, pay-to-win RNG video game. It's a simulation. Whatever it is, you stop caring. And then when you stop caring, that's another form of radicalization because you just give up, right? So...
In order to understand Gen Z's radicalization, we need to look at its contributing factors. It's not enough to just throw up our hands and say, wow, these people are so out of touch and stupid, as true as that might seem in some cases. We need to ask, what kind of world produces young people who think this way? Switching the framing like that can provide us with a perspective that might help cool our anger towards these groups' harmful or hateful beliefs, while allowing us to observe historical trends that answer the question I just posed. Historically, young people are more prone to radicalization when certain conditions are met, and the conditions I want to focus on in this video are economic instability and declining optimism, adults and institutions failing to provide stable meaning and a sense of generational betrayal, and massive technological shifts.
Okay, so this is the economic instability, yes. The adults and institutions failing to provide meaning. This is the purpose of religion, but this is also... See, I think there's one thing that the young generation is willing to do, maybe, which like older generations are not willing to do, and that's like really truly accept reality. And there are some things in reality that are uncomfortable. I do believe looks is clearly one of them, but looks is not all that dictates attraction, but looks is clearly one of them. And I think our people's understanding of like marriage and how marriage works, I think, is really screwed up. Like, people have no concept of how marriage is actually supposed to work, because we've diluted what marriage really truly means. What the real purpose of marriage was never love in the first place. People never got married because of love. People, never in history has this happened before. Never in Greece, never in ancient Greece, never in Egypt. You name the civilization, it doesn't matter. This is a super, super recent concept. And I believe it's completely and utterly failing. So that's another example. And massive technological shifts. This is just the internet. The internet lets you explore your own form of how you would like to be radicalized, because there's so many different corners of the internet. So.
And if it isn't obvious to you already, all of these kind of work in tandem. One affects the other, and so forth and so forth. So let's go over the first point, economic instability and declining optimism, using a time where mass radicalization of the youth reached a somewhat similar popularity as it has today, post-World War I Germany. Germany came out of the war defeated and humiliated, sending the economy into full hyperinflation. By 1923, the monthly inflation rate peaked around 29,500%, meaning prices were doubling every few days. $1 which cost 50 marks in 1920, was suddenly worth 4.2 trillion marks by November 1924. Middle-class savings, pensions, and long-term wages were basically erased. And if you're young people watching your parents' finances vanish overnight, the message is pretty clear. The system doesn't work, and the adults in charge have no idea what they're doing. Hyperinflation got tamed by 1924, but the damage to trust was done. Then, the Great Depression hit. Industrial output fell by roughly 30%, and by 1932, around 6.1 million Germans were unemployed, about one-third of the working-age population. Historians writing about this period talk about a, quote, lost generation of jobless youth whose entire entry into adult life was barricaded. Being young in 1930s Germany often meant no job, no prospects, and no clear place in society. Does that sound familiar? Now let's talk about how this funneled young people into extremist thinking. In this context, radical political groups became one of the only places offering a story that made sense out of the chaos and a path to feeling useful and important. On the far right, the Nazi Party and its orbit leaned hard into youth recruitment. After the crash, Nazi electoral support exploded from about 2% of the vote in 1928 to 38% by mid-1932, making them the largest party in the Reichstag. Paramilitary groups like the SA and earlier Freikorps units, often made up of men in their 20s, gave disoriented young guys uniforms, camaraderie, and a sense of political purpose. But the clearest example of this youth funnel is the Hitler Youth. Membership was relatively modest at the end of 1932, about 108,000 boys. But after the Nazis took power and started suppressing rival youth organizations, membership skyrocketed to 2.3 million by 1933 and around 3.6 million by 1934, and kept climbing in the later 1930s. It's important to note that people don't necessarily adopt extremist racist ideologies simply because of economic instability. But if there's some part of that embedded already within the culture, and then a strong enough, confident enough political leader produces enough propaganda to convince you that your problems will be solved if you attach yourself to these racist ideologies, that's when it really starts to sprout.
That's just a really charismatic person. All it takes is a super charismatic person. And they could be on, by the way, the good or the bad side of history. So you could have the super charismatic leader who's actually like very good, like Ataturk back in the 19, or I think it was 19-ish hundreds. Is like super rare. And then you could also have the other side, which is like Hitler, right? So it's one way or the other, right? But the thing is, it's a super charismatic person. It's just what that charismatic person chooses to do, that's up to them. The supposed good or evil sort of thing, right? So.
On the far left, there was somewhat of a similar story. The Young Communist League of Germany, the youth wing of the Communist Party, grew into a dedicated militant organization whose membership peaked in the tens of thousands by the last years of the Weimar Republic. So you have one set of youth channeling their anger into nationalist extremism and racial hierarchy, while another channeled it into revolutionary extremism and class war. But both sides are reacting to a structural reality where their future was stripped away from them, and in that reality, extremist organizations promise three things that normal institutions can no longer promise, which is certainty, belonging, and a future. Without thinking too hard, you can clearly see how much of this mirrors the material conditions and cultural narratives happening in the West today. The unemployment rate for Americans between 20 and 24 just hit a 10-year high, excluding the pandemic. And for the first time in the last 40 years or so, the unemployment rate for recent college graduates aged 22 to 27 is higher than the unemployment rate for all workers. While renting prices have cooled down significantly, the general cost of living has not. Any Gen Zer can tell you how unaffordable daily life feels now, even with an average job. And of course, the rising cost of education throws them into thousands of dollars of debt before they can even get started. In a system like this, it's no wonder that young people are more susceptible to latching on to extremist ideas, because those ideas, unlike the solutions proposed by people who are more nuanced and sit in the middle of the political spectrum, are vivid and establish a clear enemy, which, to them at least, is much better than having no purpose at all. But I want to expand upon
I will agree. That's very, very true. Very, very true. That part's very true, yeah.
that point a bit further after going into the next condition which usually leads to radicalization in a society. Adults in institutions failing to provide stable meaning and a sense of generational betrayal. But first, I've been talking extensively on this channel about being chronically offline, and the importance of that is really going to be highlighted in this. Before the internet became the youth's primary source of information, most of your sense of how the world works came from a few big pillars. Your family, school, maybe a church or religious community, and whatever image of the country you got from news, movies, and politics. If they're functioning well, they offer some kind of answer to questions like, what matters, who can I trust, and is the future worth working toward? It's common for the youth to disagree or even rebel against the most common answers to these questions, but they still form a stable backdrop. However, when these institutions start to feel hollow or hypocritical, that backdrop collapses. To see how this played out in the real world and relate it back to today, we can look at the late 1960s and early 1970s in the US and Western Europe. In the early 1960s, most Americans still believed the federal government was basically trustworthy. In 1964, about 77% of Americans said they trusted Washington to do what is right just about always or most of the time.
Okay, yeah, but that's also because propaganda was more effective back then. Like, propaganda, in the age of the internet, I hate to break it to you, propaganda is a hell of a lot harder to get into somebody's head. Sure, you could definitely get it into their head, but there's also so many other forms of propaganda that they can get into their head as well. So you're competing, your propaganda is competing with other propaganda. So it's like, good luck.
Within a decade, after the escalation of the Vietnam War, civil rights clashes, urban riots, and the Watergate scandal, that number had dropped to 36%, and by the end of the 1970s, it was around 25%. In other words, the default assumption went from the people in charge are trying, even if they mess up, to they're probably lying. At the same time, the Vietnam War made that loss of trust feel brutally personal, especially for young people. Between 1964 and 1973, the U.S. military drafted about 2.2 million men out of an eligible pool of 27 million. The people deciding on the war were older, and the people forced to fight in it were overwhelmingly 18 to 26. That age gap is the emotional core of generational betrayal. The older people make these catastrophic decisions, and the younger bodies have to absorb the consequences.
I'm going to be honest, I just think the old people are, like, incredibly greedy and selfish. Like, they're incredibly greedy and selfish, and the problem is that they didn't even, they were forced to grow up like that. So, it's bound to happen. I mean, like, there's a lot of this, there's a lot of these, I guess you could say, like, revolutions that happened that really messed up how the world initially was working. So, I mean, you could say one of those revolutions that messed everything up was actually the American Revolution, which gave everybody independence. And the problem is that eventually it got to a point where we seem to think that men and women are equal. I mean, there's so many big problems that ended up happening. I mean, it's this giant, I guess you could say, domino effect after about the 17 or 1800s that really started to kick everything in. And I think that's because, honestly, it's because people started getting married for love instead of the true purpose of marriage. That's love was never part of marriage. Eros is not part of marriage. It's philia, pretty much. And philia and pragma, which are part of marriage, which I made a video on. If you're interested, go check that out. It's in the relationship playlist. So yeah, this is where it all started, I think, anyways.
Then there's events like what happened at Kent State. On May 4th, 1970, National Guard troops opened fire on students protesting the war at Kent State University in Ohio, killing 4 and wounding 9 more. The shootings triggered a nationwide student strike that shut down hundreds of colleges and universities. Think about what that does to you as a young person watching that unfold. The institutions are basically saying that they would rather shoot you than listen to you, and whatever moral authority those institutions held evaporates. A similar pattern played out in France during May 1968. Student protests against rigid universities led to police crackdowns and street battles in Paris, and within weeks around 10 million workers joined a general strike, which was the largest in French history. The economy hadn't collapsed like Weimar Germany's, but a whole generation felt locked out by rigid institutions and a political class that refused to make room for them. In both cases, you see the same pattern. Institutions lose legitimacy, younger generations feel increasingly sacrificed or silenced, and more radical movements step in with a satisfying narrative. They say, "You're not crazy, you're right to feel betrayed. Here's who did this to you, and here's how we fight back." Talking about this with a bit of nuance, though, and I'm going to highlight this again in the later portion of the video, I do think some radical movements are necessary. You know, going on protest for students getting shot, going on this like nationwide meltdown, it's sometimes necessary in order to enact the change that you need. But, you know, it is happening in a different sort of flavor here, and that's not necessarily the type of radical movements that I have been trying to criticize throughout this video and that I'm going to continue trying to criticize. These sorts of problems have only been highlighted and exacerbated to the nth degree in modern society. Using our next condition I'm going to go over, the technological shifts we've received over the past couple decades, every corrupt politician or scandal has been dissected and exposed, leaving little to no room for manipulation. And when you couple that with an increasingly unstable and unpredictable environment, it's no wonder why the youth feels like they were betrayed and the future that they prepared for never came. But by far, what is probably the biggest contributor to radicalization of all types that has undoubtedly affected all of these other conditions is the rise of the internet and smartphones. The globalization of information allowed us to educate ourselves on so much, but it also made it remarkably easier to fall into echo chambers of misinformation and extremist thinking to help us explain why we feel so lost, empty, hopeless, and displaced.
Well, see, this is the thing. People, I mean, he's probably going to consider carnivore extreme, right? Is it extreme? You could consider it extreme. Does it work? Yes. And the same thing, and this, once again, the same thing applies to this clavicular guy that he's criticizing as well. He's criticizing clavicular as an example for looks maxing, and looks are basically the only thing that determines it. And do I believe it's only looks? No. But do I agree looks play a massive role? Yeah, they do. Clearly they do. I mean, this is just look at his results. That's the best example. All you need to do is look at reality. Look at reality versus like what other people are telling you. And your reality is probably going to be far different than what other people are saying. People might say like vegetables are healthy and whatnot, and your reality tells you that's complete bullshit. Or people might say, "Oh my God, it's okay. It's normal to have a complete." This is a personal one, I guess you could say, because I've seen so much of this, and I grew up with quite a bit of this. It's very normal to have a lot of conflict between the parents, and that's once again, I think actually that's complete bullshit. I mean, there's so much bullshit that's just rampant today, and it's because reality is clearly painting an obvious picture, and it's telling you, no, that's not right, that's not right, that's not right. You don't have to be experiencing that. No, that's not right. And all you need to do is just experience it. Do you really need to shower? That's my example. I mean, people consider that radical. I'm radicalized because I don't shower and I don't brush my teeth and I eat only meat. and I sleep on the floor, right? I do all these supposed radical things, but they work. So is it really radical, or is it like legitimate? Is it real? Once again, it's all just reality. Just look at the picture that reality paints for you. And Clavicular, I think, is a great example. He proved it. He proved how much looks really matter. Because if you look at his position right now, look at how much people are really like starting to make him blow up and make his channel blow up. And it's so obvious. It's so obvious. Like clearly, this guy is saying looks matter a lot in your life. And people are saying no, but they're giving him so much traction. People are paying so much attention to him. So clearly looks matter somewhat, because he is literally living proof. He just changed his looks a ton, and suddenly he's getting all this traction, and all these people want to talk to him and stuff. Really? Really? See, this is where it's like, just look at reality, man.
It is not just politicians or people in power who can do the manipulating now. Anyone with enough confidence and perceived authority can lean into your confirmation bias, convincing you that your struggles are due to some singular life flaw or a certain group of people, when the reality is far more complex. Looks maxing is one of those examples. Often.
See, this is where I have to disagree with him. Bro, Clavicular's living proof. Looks matter. Living proof. He's telling me looks maxing is not right, is not correct. And this man has changed his looks, and now he has blown up in popularity, and he's getting probably tons and tons and tons of views, and he's getting tons of people who want to collab with him, and that gets him what? Ad revenue, and that gives him money on YouTube. And you're telling me looks don't matter? That doesn't add up, because he's making a ton of money because of his beliefs, and two, he lives his beliefs out. He believes looks really matter. He has clearly really good looks, and he's making a lot of money. So it's like, yeah, really.
Looks maxers align their beliefs highly with the black pill ideology. This is a sphere on the internet who believe that without good looks, you have zero chance of attracting somebody, getting a good job, or achieving basically any amount of success. But the foundations of society set them up for this kind of thinking. Before someone even considers themselves a black pillar, they're usually someone who's having more difficulty with women than they ever would have in previous generations, largely because the dating market has skewed in ways shaped by technology and a lack of stable opportunities. So what do? They go searching for answers online. Confirmation bias pushes them to focus only on what already feels true, which might be the belief that everything comes down to their looks. They start consuming black pill content in a viscerally emotional state, and the experiences within that community mirror their own. Slowly, they seep deeper and deeper into that rabbit hole, and that ideology seeps into everything they do.
But they're really experiencing it. This is what I mean. You can't deny somebody's reality. If somebody's saying, hey, I have a problem, you can't just say, oh, okay, that problem doesn't exist. Oh, okay, you're saying that you're, what was this problem? This guy right here? Oh, you're just a short, skinny Asian guy living in Toronto, Canada. And I'm very lonely, and I've never had a GF, and I have no deep connections or barely any deep connections. And I mean, when you look at this guy right here, he's clearly experiencing reality, and his reality is telling him looks clearly matter. It might not just be all looks, but clearly his looks is playing a role in his problems. I mean, it's a no-brainer. It's an absolute no-brainer. So you can't deny somebody's reality. This is a problem. You can't. If they are, all you need to do is just look at their results. That's the best. Literally, just be a worker. Be an employer. What do employers do? Well, they look at your previous success. Did you have previous success, as an example? Did you have a track record of success? Become an investor. Look at somebody's track record of success. That's all you need to do. All you need to do. And you will find out, and maybe ColeHastings will realize, this guy, he ain't fully wrong. Looks really do matter. He's living proof of it. So
I can only imagine some version of this happened to that clavicular guy I mentioned at the beginning. Because let's be honest here, if technology and social media didn't push us to focus on the more superficial aspects of humanity, if the economy was stable...
It's not the superficial. It's okay, hold on. Hold up there, buddy. It ain't just the superficial aspects. Technology and media is what lets us see all of the world, and we get to see a lot more perspectives. So we get to see what's really true and what's really not true. Just because a girl says, "Oh, I like guys who are nice and kind and whatever," you don't listen to anybody's words. You listen to their actions and you look at their track record. If she says she likes that, does she date that? No, since she's clearly lying and she's full of shit. Is she dating the exact opposite? Is she dating the really tall, handsome guy who's going to leave her and screw her once and then leave her? Yes. Okay. Well, clearly there's something here. You can't ignore results. This is what I mean. So it's like, what can I say? Just look at reality, right? I mean, but that doesn't mean that it's the only kind of guy that she's gonna date. She might end up dating some not necessarily super good looking guy because he's incredibly masculine in his frame. So it's like but the only problem is you never see that today. You almost never see that ever, actually. I haven't seen 99.9999% of men I have not seen be masculine. That's how bad it is. So it's an incredibly high number. It's not easy too either. You have to sort of look at life like a simulation and a game, because otherwise you take it too seriously, you take it too literally, and that's a turnoff. So, strangely enough.
And people had a fairly easy time getting a job and a partner, and it wasn't revealed that basically all institutions are lying to us and there's little meaning to extract from any of this. Do you think the thought of, I need to become a Chad Looksmaxer, would have even crossed this guy's mind? Absolutely not. But the conditions of society today create the perfect concoction to produce more radicalized young people, because radicalization gives them something to grasp in a world that feels increasingly nebulous.
Radicalization, honestly, in my view, radicalization is just finding out truths. You're going to imagine truth is going north, okay? In order to find the truth, you must go north. Well, radicalization is just taking a ton of people in the middle, and when you play pool and you just shoot the ball, one ball in the middle, and it cracks the entire, you hear that entire crack, and all these balls go flying all over the place on the pool table. And all these balls, some will go north, some will go south, some will go this way, some will go that way, some will go northwest, northeast, right? All of that's basically what you're doing when you're radicalizing people. You're just shooting people in tons of different directions. And will some of them find the truth? Sure, they might find the truth in some ways. Will some of them not find the truth? Oh, a stupid fly. Will some of them not find the truth? Yeah, some of them won't find the truth. Some of them will go south instead of north. So it's like...
It also gives them a sense of identity, which is unbelievably important when you're young, and something that social media and institutions have broke. And that's another reason why this iteration of society feels so devoid of hope and purpose, even if there might be. At least in the past, if you were going through some shit, you would at least have that friend group or some sort of community, like a religious organization, that you could fall back to that hold the same beliefs as you. But the internet, in all of its individualized, hyperbolized sections, divides humans into extremely specific, unique subcategories that separate you from everyone else in a way that we have never seen before. When we gained access to any and all information, it gave us the ability to shape our beliefs into something uniquely our own. But the consequence was that agreeableness, even when
it's not really uniquely our own in most cases. Most people just kind of are following one other person in a lot of cases. In a lot of cases. A lot of people, if you truly look at it, a lot of people's thoughts are never their own. It's a lot of thoughts. So
meant conforming to a group you didn't fully align with began to erode. The amount of identity subgroups on the internet is insane now. There's gooners, doomers, zoomers, e-girls.
Okay, this is realistic though. Gooners, that's understandable. Doomers, this is inevitable. I mean, you screw the economy up that much. E-girls, that's, once again, this is sort of obvious, yeah.
femcells,
Femme cells. I could see it. Well, there's the opposite side, right? And there's guys and girls like this, so obviously.
sigma males, neo-trad wives,
Neo-trad. I have not heard of neo-tradwives before. That's an interesting one. We're tradwives. We believe in gender roles in our marriage. I think this is maybe good, but they're missing like the main picture of being a quote-unquote tradwife. It's not about being a tradwife. It's about recognizing that marriage is not about love. Like, it never was.
based nationalists, anarcho-primitivists.
Holy shit, I haven't heard of some of these.
The list is endless. You might not trust your government, your school, or your parents, but you can trust those guys in your Discord server or subreddit who can understand all the things that you're going through that nobody else can. Or you can trust the creator who's telling you exactly why you're struggling and exactly who's to blame. And there's also something a bit more insidious going on with the internet and the feedback loop it provides that I don't think enough people really understand or are talking about. I brought this article up in my last video, but it is simply too important to not bring it up again. This National Geographic article shows how social media keeps you in a constantly deregulated, traumatized state. In the article, there was a study measuring acute stress after viewing the pictures of the Boston Marathon bombing in 2013, and they found that people who viewed more violent imagery were more likely to report post-traumatic stress symptoms like nightmares, hypervigilance, and emotional numbness 6 months later. But this is the insane part. Individuals who consumed over 6 hours of media per day reported more acute psychological symptoms like unwanted dreams, difficulty sleeping, and intrusive memories than those who were actually at the bombing. So think about how often this happens nowadays, now that we have access to all of the world's tragedies that are thrust down our throat at all times on social media. You have millions of young Americans stuck in an emotional state that is similar, if not worse, to trauma survivors who then go out into the real world in that emotional state, who then affect the world in that emotional state due to how they engage with it. Like, it's no fucking wonder why Gen Z is so radicalized, because when you're in such an emotionally dysregulated state all the time, the logic centers of the brain turn off.
But their logic centers aren't off. That's the problem. Your logic centers aren't off. You're gonna make more radicalized people, but that doesn't mean your logic centers are off. All it means is their reality is clearly looking at it and going, they test reality. Reality gives an answer, and they look at that answer and they make their own conclusion. And their conclusion, if they're a looks maxer, is, well, looks clearly matter because I'm not really getting attention, or I haven't had a girlfriend yet, or I don't know, whatever their problem is. So it's like, it's no wonder, obviously.
Stop seeking the nuance. You stop trying to find objective truth, and you simply just grasp onto whatever makes sense in that moment, whatever's the most extreme, and whatever attaches to your emotions the most and makes you feel the most pleasurable in that moment. And in that moment, it's going to be some sort of radical thinking. So let's try to distill everything that has led to Gen Z's radicalization in a few sentences. They live in a time of increasing debt, unemployment, and economic uncertainty. The traditional forms of meaning, whether through religion or community in real life, have kind of dissolved. There's a growing distrust in institutions to set things right, and an equally growing divide between a generation that came up in a steadier world and one raised inside an ever-changing, ever-complex hyper-reality. And as a result, to try to form any semblance of belonging, meaning, or revolt, Gen Z is more prone to radicalize themselves into loads of different subgroups. Do you really think I'm just going to leave this video on that note? Absolutely not. I do not believe in raising awareness to problems without posing solutions. I don't know much. Maybe that's probably obvious to you by now, but here's what I do know. What I told you. We have been in a similar situation before. The youth have fought to restore meaning and to create a less bleak future through hope. The constantly dysregulated states we find ourselves in due to the atrocities portrayed on social media makes it much harder for most people to actually enact the changes they want to see in the real world. But I promise you, you have more agency over your life than you think, and you will realize it when you fight against these primal urges to seek out negative information and hopelessness on this thing. I thought for a while about what message I wanted to leave you with, and I think this is
I don't think that's the right way. I got to be honest. You can't go without the internet. If you're going without the internet, that's like literally not using AI during for your job, as an example. I mean, AI is like a huge help for most, hopefully, anyways. It's used by most people because it's incredibly efficient. I use it all the time. It's insanely helpful. It's basically just a giant memory database. I mean, imagine a human who memorized all of the information in all of the libraries ever. And it's all dependent on what question do you ask them. If you ask them the right question, it will give you that response. But it all depends on the question.
in order to escape the radicalization rabbit hole you might find yourselves in. You need to escape or be inspired through art. And before you get all mad at me, like, what the hell is this guy even talking about? Let me tell you a story about two people during World War I who instilled optimism back into the youth. In 1916, Switzerland was neutral but surrounded by the chaos of war. Optimism for the future was hard to come by, and people needed a place to cope with reality's relentless bad news. Inspired by the artists, writers, and intellectuals that fled there, Hugo Ball and Emmy Hennings opened what they called the Cabaret Voltaire in 1916. The cabaret staged absurd performances, including spoken word, dance, and music. Though some of these performances were directly tied to the war, much of the entertainment was experimental, allowing the audience to, if only for a moment, escape the raging conflict. This used to be the young people's best way of escaping from the atrocities of life that they couldn't make a direct impact on in the moment.
You know what that's called today? I'll tell you what that's called. It's something I do all the time. In fact, I guarantee you almost every man has done this as well. Take a guess. 3, 2, 1. It's called video games. It ain't that hard, buddy.
They immersed themselves in art, gathering together in groups that, in most cases, I would say, didn't discriminate and were very welcoming.
This is what I mean. Video games are just a form of art. I mean, like, it's video games, man, okay? Just play video games.
People came out of that viewing experience, out of engaging with art, suddenly they were instilled with a bit of hope. And though the idea of a better future might have seemed far away, that little sense of hope reverberated throughout their actions. If we compare that to how we cope today, the difference is night and day. Our forms of escapism don't leave us more refreshed and inspired to take on the world when we return to it. They only leave us more doomeristic and hopeless. If we really want to start feeling like things will get better, which will in turn allow us to do the actions that will actually make life better for us in the future.
Okay, first off, he's saying that, like, we actually have, like, young people actually have a way to make life better for us. Okay, realistically, right now, I'm going to have to completely disagree with that. No. Young people, as a general rule, do not have a lot of power. They have minimal, if no power. And in fact, it's only getting worse. I mean, there's so many examples to show this. But realistic, like, you have to be realistic, man. It's not, they didn't just suddenly get hope after watching this, after getting inspired by art or whatever. I mean, maybe, sure, they did a little bit, but they were in a completely different time. They're completely different times today. Like, people play video games as their form of escapism, and they don't drink alcohol like they did before, as an example. These young people might have been drinking alcohol all the time. Well, people today don't do that. So it's just, I don't buy it, bud. It's video games. You want to escape video games.
We need to engage with art meaningfully like we used to. Art is where we go to make sense of the world. It's where connections are made and stories take place that ignite inspiration and optimism within us. A good book, a good movie, a good painting, a good piece of craftsmanship.
Once again, all he's describing are video games.
This is where we see someone's tireless process materialize that some part of us can relate to. And when we see and we're surrounded by people who have the same feelings we have, who overcame those feelings and overcame that struggle through art, we start to think to ourselves, maybe that's possible for me too. Maybe I can start to shift things into a positive state.
Bud. Oh my God, come on. This is like, I'm gonna be honest. This is like he's living in a superhero movie or something. This is reality, okay? This is not about art. It's not about art suddenly making us feel all happy, and then now we're gonna solve all of our problems, even where we're gonna push it in the right direction. This is what the right direction looks like. It looks like people truly accepting reality. This isn't really. I mean, sure, there is some. You could call it extremism. I would just call it being shot off in the wrong direction. But there's a lot of people coming to reality and going, looks are clearly playing a role. Marriage clearly doesn't seem to be working right now. There's clearly something off here. I mean, I have no hope in the economy. I have no future. Like, I can't get a job. I will never be able to afford a house, a 50-year mortgage. Hey, come on. Let's be real, okay?
You detach yourself from the phone when you immerse yourself in a great piece of fiction, or you paint, or you journal, or you write, or you build some DIY project while you're still working through your emotions.
Bro, it's video
That's when
games.
you start to realize there is a future that looks better, and it is a future I can contribute to. As soon as you feel yourself getting emotional and wanting to turn to this rectangle to shut your brain off, stop. Let your thoughts breathe. Think about how you're trying to blame some sort of average person.
Okay, this guy's living in delusion. I hate to break it to you. Like, look, you're right that everybody, like Gen Z being radicalized isn't for no reason, but I think you're wrong on the solutions. I think this is a clear, it's not art. Okay, everything he's describing are what men play today, and what a lot of people, even women, are sort of playing a little bit of today as well. It's called video games, all right? And they use that as their form of escapism. And they're also partially doing that because they can't do, there's a lot of things that people just can't do today. They can't get a job. Even if they do get a job, it's not even worth their time because they're getting ripped off for some way or another. Their tax dollars aren't even being spent correctly. The urban planning of their area makes social connection almost impossible. Like, these people that he was talking about in Switzerland, their urban planning was legitimate. Like, it wasn't miles and miles and miles away just to go visit a friend maybe. But no, now it's miles and miles and miles away just to potentially visit a friend. All, like, it's a different reality, dude. I hate to break it to you. I'm going to disagree with you on that one. This is not a solution. This is not a good solution. It's called video games. It's not really a solution, but that's the form of escapism that he's referring to. Because people don't do this art stuff today, okay? They make it into the better form of art, which is all of those things that he just mentioned combined. You take animations, you take music, you take a sort of sport in some sense, you take game rules and you stuff it all into one, and congratulations, you got a video game.
For some group of people, for what's going on in the world and how you want to become radicalized and how your emotions are starting to fill up. Sit with those emotions, as awful as they might feel, and move through them through some sort of art form or through some sort of healthy escapism like I outlined in this video.
I hate to break it to you again. Once again, there is no there is no healthy form of escapism, I guess you could say. There's more violent forms and less violent forms. The less violent forms are like looks maxing in video games. The more violent forms are becoming politicized and doing things in schools that you probably shouldn't be doing.
Just realize how every human, at the end of the day, just wants to feel fulfilled, like their actions mean something in the world. And if someone is super radicalized, you now understand why the world would push them to that sort of thinking. And you don't necessarily have to give that type of person sympathy, but at the very least you can have that sort of understanding and perhaps push them to not be as radicalized in their thinking through healthy, engaging conversations.
You're not going to do that through healthy, oh my God, this guy's living in delusion again. Bro, this is not about healthy, engaging conversations. This is about money. They're broke. They're living in their cars with their I mean, bro, I'm disappointed. Very, very, very good information towards the beginning, but the solution is horrific. Oh my God, and he's not even addressing the true problem. The true problem is there is problems that exist right now. This isn't all be happy, it's a Superman sort of superhero kind of thing. Everything works out in the end. That ain't how reality works, okay? Hate to break it to you. It just isn't. There are some very sick stories and sad stories in history. And religion does a very good job of that. They describe those stories sometimes. Not necessarily directly, but they'll use gods as their example to sort of explain some very sick things that happen. So
healthy discourse and healthy disagreements that could help push us towards a better world where we understand, yeah, we're pretty fucking different, but we're also pretty fucking alike, and everyone kind of just wants the same thing, and there's probably a better way to do all of this. And that's a world where we can actually start tackling the root issues of economic instability, institutions failing, and a lack of meaning.
Okay, you can't. The young people can't attack the economic institutions basically screwing them over. Bro, Citizens United passed in 2009. That was a huge indicator of the United States turning from democracy to plutocracy. And you only see even more examples of it today. Because if you look at the billionaires today, or whatever, in comparison to back then, and you look at just how much they're able to shape elections, which then shape policies, which then shape what they're allowed to do. I mean, it's a night and day difference, man. It's, so the young people are just going to have to get rid of, like, Citizens United. They're going to have to look at all of these laws that are, like, these red tape that's all basically screwing them over completely. They're going to have to get rid of that, like, zoning laws as urban planning. I mean, bro, there's so many things they have to get rid of. And my channel might cover some of these things, but it does not cover every single damn little specific thing. So give me a break, man. No. All right, this is too trying to give hope to people. You got to be realistic sometimes, okay? There's a little bit of hope, but right now there's not much hope.
Instead of blaming it on a certain race or because you don't have a high enough sexual market value. I would love to hear how you inject more optimism into this world in the comments below. Let's start a positive chain. Just get the more positive stuff flowing so people actually feel influenced to get off their phones or get off whatever they're watching this on right now and go engage with the real world and smile at people and just think, well, we're going to fucking make it through this because we've been in this situation before, we'll get through it again, and that is it. That is it. I'm not going to tell you to walk.
All right, you know what? We're going to give him a comment right now. That art form that you're talking about for people to escape into, that's called video games. Video games today. And people today have completely different problems. I agree that that the radicalization shouldn't be surprising, but the solutions are quite poor, to say the least, in my opinion. Gotta be realistic. This generation was screwed by many things, some of which are so hard to perceive, like Citizens United passed in 2009, which turned the United States, man, I'm making a really long comment here, from a democracy more into a plutocracy, and the urban planning of the United States basically forces people into being more isolated because they have to take a car and spend money to go literally anywhere. Gotta be realistic, bud. Sorry. There you go. All right, well, that's my comment. Hopefully you guys learned something from the video or found it interesting. I found the video pretty interesting for the most part. I agree with him that obviously we shouldn't be surprised that honestly people are just radicalized as a general rule, especially more so today. But his take on how to get there, like how do you solve the problem, I think that's pretty poor. I think he also sort of misses the fact that video games is the escape outlet for people today, including me. I mean, I play video games all the time, so this is a no-brainer. Like, video games is by far the best art form. And it's because you can combine literally everything into the video game. You can combine the visual art, you can combine the auditory art, and in this case, the painting. You can also animate the painting too. I mean, there's so many amazing things you can do with video games. I love video games. So, hey, I'm all for them. Anyways, thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next one.